ever find.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural episode of From the Nosebleeds. It's a great day for us to have our first show because we are getting here to talk about a huge Broncos win. One of the biggest wins of the Sean Payton era, if not the biggest win of the Sean Payton era. It was a signature win. And I'm here with Trent Finnegan. I'm Joey Gunnar. We've got a lot to talk about today because, wow, what the Broncos did yesterday was incredible. Am I right, Trent?
Yeah, it was incredible and something they were finally aggressive. You know, those two heartbreaking losses on those field goals at the buzzer, they weren't exactly aggressive in the fourth quarter of those. They were like they were just playing to drain the clock out instead of playing to win. They were playing to win yesterday. They were aggressive in that fourth quarter. They went for two. I know a lot of people were a little scared when they saw them line up.
Yeah, I was scared.
But that's what this fan base has been looking for. You know, you pay Sean Payton all this money, you trade a first-round pick for him. You're trying to win big football games on the road against the defending champs. He called a great game in the fourth quarter. He was aggressive, and they came out with a W. Just great stuff.
Yeah, overall, and it came from the players, of course. I mean, they're the ones out in the field making it all happen, but Bo Nix had a great game. He went 24 of 39, 242 yards, and a touchdown, and that touchdown came when they needed it most in the fourth quarter. He also threw for that two-point conversion. I believe I'm correct on he threw for the two-point conversion. Yes. But, yeah, overall, a great game from Bo, and we were talking about beforehand, coming off of that Bengals win, can Bo Nix carry that energy into a game against the Eagles? You know, it's a totally different game. I was saying yesterday to my friends that a win against the Bengals has as much value as a loss to the Eagles. The Bengals don't really prove anything. But what he did clearly gave him some confidence back because what we saw yesterday was the Bo Nix that we've come to know. That's Bo Nix from last year. That real, calm, can get plays moving, can get a drive actually going rather than what we've seen him do in the first couple of weeks of this season. He looked great.
Yeah, 100%. And, early he missed Sherfield on what would have been that touchdown up the left side. And a lot of people were a little antsy because that's what happened against the Chargers a couple times. Mm-hmm. But really in that second half, he settled in. He was on time. He was on schedule. He was running that offense efficiently. He got some help from the run game as well. But that's the quarterback that these Broncos fans have been wanting to see. They don't need a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson to go make a ton of crazy plays. They just need somebody who can run the offense on schedule. That's what he did in the fourth quarter, and it resulted in 3 drives that ended in 3 scores. It was a great second half from Bo Nix yesterday.
Incredible. It was overall incredible, and it wasn't just Bo Nix because J.K. Dobbins took over 20 carries for 79 yards. And then you see RJ Harvey, who had 4 carries for 12 yards. So J.K. Dobbins was clearly getting the brunt of the load there. But this is the first time the Broncos ran for 100 yards and a touchdown in each of the first 5 games in a season since 1978. Insane. Clearly, the Broncos have found a run game that they can trust. I mean, last year with the running back room, there was nothing to be secure about. I mean, I didn't feel good at all anytime it was a real run play or they were going and looking forward into, on second down conversion or 2-point conversions. I mean, you can't give the ball off. That's the one fear I had last season. That fear has been totally alleviated this year. With J.K. Dobbins and RJ Harvey, those guys have taken over the backfield and really made it so that they can succeed just as much as Bo Nix.
Oh, I agree with you. And, Dobbins with the 20 carries, it looks like he's sort of become head and shoulders above the rest of the room as the top running back. But it's not like they're not using Harvey. Harvey's on kick return. Harvey got 3 targets yesterday, caught all of them for 18 yards. And he still got 4 carries and he had a couple of decent runs. So I think they found a good blend with using Dobbins primarily in between the tackles in the run game and then utilizing Harvey's agility on the outside. And like you're saying, this team, especially last year, they had no identity of running the ball whatsoever with Jamal Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin last year. And this 2-headed horse in the backfield, it's still very early, and especially for Harvey's still super young, but they could have found something. I feel like yesterday showed the blend that they could have going forward the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, with those guys back there to take off some of the weight off Bo Nix's shoulders, it's just incredible. I mean, before the season began, I was speaking about how big this offseason was with Evan Ingram, the extending Cortland Sutton, getting in RJ Harvey and JK Dobbins, and just making it more secure for Bo Nix, because, you go back to what people were saying about him in college, that he was just a flat merchant, somebody who just would throw behind the line of scrimmage, that kind of stuff. We didn't get to see that out of Bo Nix last year because he was forced to throw it downfield because nobody in the backfield could ever get open for him. Nobody in the tight end room was really that solid. So now you got Evan Ingram, who also had a great day yesterday. And then you got those guys, J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey, to really take that weight off and make sure that they can be a threat on the just as much as Bo Nix or just as much as Courtland Sutton, because they are out there working just as hard. They're able to make big plays, and they're definitely a step up from what we had in this room last year. But
yeah, I love real quick. I love that you brought up Evan Ingram. 6 targets yesterday with the absence of Lucas Kroll going to IR. It was an opportunity for him to step up, and he had that big catch late over the middle. It was good to see Evan Ingram get going, and he needs to be Bo Nix's safety valve going forward, along with the running backs in the flats. It was just good all around to see those guys get open and make plays.
Yeah, I mean, where has Evan Ingram been through the first couple weeks? It felt like I was actually seeing a ghost out there, because I was seeing this guy catch balls, and I was like, who is this guy? I don't think we've met before. It was great to see him finally out there. And Courtland Sutton, too. I mean, in the passing game, he was making big plays when called upon. He was really out there being that kind of safety blanket for Bo Nix. He had 8 catches on 10 targets for 99 yards. And with that, he moved into 8th in team history in receiving yards. That's the third fastest to 400 receptions. So that was a huge day for Courtland Sutton out there yesterday. Just completely took over on that side of the ball and made the most of his catches, made the most of his targets. If you're getting targeted 10 times, catching them 80% of the time, catching 80% of those balls, that's a pretty good number. Of course, we know how good of hands Courtland Sutton has, but really good to have him out there being that, again, safety blanket for Bo Nix.
Yeah, and he got out to that slow start, but it was huge what he was doing for Nix in the fourth quarter. And it's not like he was going up against some scrub. He was going up against Quinyon Mitchell, who is one of the best young corners in the NFL, and he's making contested catches on back shoulder fades. He ran that dig on, I think it was a 3rd and 12 late in the fourth quarter that he got enough separation on, and then he slips through 2 tackles and he turns into a 30-plus yard gain. That's the Courtland Sutton this team needs to see week in and week out. I think his biggest knock is that sometimes, he can have a game where he's got 4 catches for 40 yards. But if he can consistently get 70, 80 yards and get 10 targets from Bo Nix, because he's clearly Bo Nix's favorite, I mean, his sure hands, he's so much bigger than all of these corners. It's such a great asset. He's not the fastest, he's not the strongest, but he's just always there. It's a security blanket, like you said. And that needs to be the Courtland Sutton going forward, not the one in the fourth quarter that Broncos fans saw, not the Courtland Sutton in the first and second quarters that was practically invisible.
Yeah. I mean, when he shows up, he really shows up. And just to highlight, a couple more players, Nick Bonito, he's been on a tear this season. I mean, is this too early to say that he could be the DPOY coming up? Because really what he's been doing is just incredible. I mean, what he's done just this season has been nuts. He has 2.5 sacks. He's the 4th Bronco to have multiple sacks in 3 straight games. That's 2.5 sacks yesterday. That's the first time since Von Miller in 2014 that he's had that. So then obviously a great game yesterday, but then overall throughout the season, 7 sacks so far this season. That's insane. That's the second most through 5 games in team history. Just nuts. What are we seeing from Nick Bonito here? Are we seeing an early campaign for DPOI?
I think so. You think that contract's worth it?
Yeah.
People were scared they waited too long, but George Payton in the front office got a steal. And I mean, he's only got 7 sacks. Right? He's got 31 pressures through 5 games. That leads the league, and it's not even close. I mean, 31 pressures, and almost half of those are quick pressures, which just means he's doing it in under 3 seconds. I mean, he has been phenomenal off the edge, and then that makes life easier for Zach Allen. That makes life easier for John Franklin Myers. That makes life easier for Jonathan Cooper. And, they all showed up as well. The whole D-line, I thought, played very well in that second half. They were getting to Hurts early and often. They had 6 sacks on the day. But Nick Bonito, man, I mean, Depoy, he should clearly be the Depoy favorite right now. I know Myles Garrett in Cleveland is playing well. I know Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive tackle in Tennessee, is playing well. But Nick Bonito is doing insane things off the edge. And remember, he was doing this to Joe Alt against the Chargers. It's not like, just like Courtland Sutton was doing it to Mitchell, it's not like these guys are having good performances against some average players. They're doing it against some of the top competition. And 7 sacks so far, I mean, can we get him close to 23 by the end of the season? Maybe get him up to that NFL record? Who knows? But now,
statistically,
he sure seems like he's going to get there.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, 7 sacks through 5 weeks. That's looking like you get 15 weeks. That's 21 sacks right there. He could get up to 23. I mean, we could be seeing the early signs of something incredible. We could be seeing the early signs of a new little, Von Miller kind of guy on the Broncos. But I mean, of course, he's been here for the past couple seasons and we know what he's capable of. And it's just good to see, a player who gets a big contract actually live up to it right away, rather than, you have to spend a couple months or even years to wait for him to fully develop. It's really good to just reap your rewards right away. But now moving over to the team as a whole, the defense, they didn't necessarily look great in the first couple quarters, but then in that fourth quarter, they completely took over, and they adjusted later in the game away from the man coverage that they were playing. They were getting torched in some aspects on man coverage and then moved to more of a zone or running some more of those sets. What were you seeing there? Because I saw a defense that adjusted and immediately succeeded.
Yeah, that first half, they were running a lot of cover one looks where they just have that single high safety. And Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith were just picking on Riley Moss in the first half. Devontae Smith finished with 114 yards on 8 catches. He was getting some go balls. He was getting open. And then kind of late in that fourth quarter, they finally went away. They used a too high shell at some points. They mixed in some zone at some points. But the big thing, back to the defensive line made it a little easier as well because they were getting Hurts, but there were a couple covered sacks in there for sure. But it was just getting away. The Eagles feast on cover one. You saw Saquon Barkley just torch Alex Singleton on that little option route where he went up the sideline for a long touchdown.
Yep.
And then again, Riley Moss was not having his best day. So once they got out of that cover one look, and how about Jahdae Barron in the secondary late in the game? Wow. He had a couple big PBUs late, a big tackle. He looked great. That was good to see from the first round pick. But as soon as Vance Joseph kind of made that adjustment after they had let up 17 points, it seemed like a light bulb went off for everybody in that secondary. And it was exactly what they needed to get back in the game. And that's what this team needs more from Vance Joseph. They need adjustments. They need it quickly. And I know he loves playing man coverage. But sometimes when you're playing the best teams in the league on the road, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to adjust. That's what he did, and that's why they were able to shut down the Eagles in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, no, they looked great. And talking more about Jahdae Barron, I believe that it was him on the second to last play of the game for the Eagles. That was him on that pass breakup. I might be wrong, but I believe so.
You talking about the one over the middle to Goddard?
Yeah.
Yes, that was Barron. Yeah, he just
incredible play.
Trailed that back hip, got the left arm across, deflected it. Just wonderful stuff.
Yeah, definitely great to see him, play up to that first round pick potential because he looked like it yesterday with just that pass breakup right there. That's the kind of thing that, really solidifies you as one of those players that can get some playing time, get out on the field consistently and prove to be one of those first round great players for the Broncos. But later in the game, you also saw the Broncos. You saw a lot of changes later in the game for the Broncos, but cleaning up on penalties, or like working on penalties, they weren't able to, keep it as clean as they wanted to. They were held back at certain points. They were really falling behind the sticks. And what I really want to talk about a little bit is the third downs that they were able to get, even with the penalties killing them. But with that success that they were having later in the game, how much better could that be if just the penalties would stop? They would stop shooting themselves in the foot because they were really poor yesterday in terms of that, penalties.
I mean, it cost them 121 yards on 12 penalties. Like that's not how you're going to win football games in January. They won a game on the road against the defending champs in October, but if you commit 12 penalties at Kansas City, at Buffalo in January, you're not going to win those games. And that could be even worse. They could be 13 for 135 if they don't pick up the intentional grounding on Bo Nix late. So, and it was a lot of there was a couple pass interferences early, and that's where a lot of the yards are going to come from. But it's got to be a little bit cleaner of an operation. Again, they got away with it. But going back to Sean Payton, that's why you bring Sean Payton in. That's why you pay Sean Payton millions and millions of dollars. That's why you trade a first-round pick for him, because you want an experienced head coach who can clean up these penalties, who can lead these guys to victory. And that's definitely one area of the game that they've got to work on. They've got to clean up. And remember, going back to that Chargers game, I think they had 10 for around 90 yards in that game. So it's a little bit of a recurring theme. So that's definitely going to need to be something that gets cleaned up. And they have a little easier stretch of games to do so in the next month or so.
Yeah. I mean, if you told me beforehand that the Broncos would have 12 penalties for 121 yards against the Eagles and win, I would call you insane. I'm not going to lie. I would actually call you insane for telling me that. Now, but what I want to bring it back to, because I mentioned this a little bit earlier, the third downs, a lot of those penalties, there were a couple intentional groundings, some really poor penalties that were unnecessary, that caused the Broncos to be way behind the sticks, especially on third down. And I believe that there were 3 drives, and I know for in fact, the 2 scoring drives at one point had the Broncos at 3rd and 21, and they were able to still push the ball along and put themselves in a scoring position. Just incredible clutch, attitude from Bo Nix and Sean Payton, because what I had seen from Bo Nix and Sean Payton before this week, I wouldn't say that they were clutch. I wouldn't. I mean, we lost 2 games already at the hands of field goals at the last second. So putting yourself in that kind of position, that's not clutch. But what we saw yesterday, being down 17-3, and you're able to get over a 3rd and 21 twice and end up scoring the ball on those 2 drives, that's clutch.
Yeah, I agree with you. They were only they won, and they were only 5 for 16, but a lot of those conversions came late when they needed it. And winning the third down then also goes back to the defense, because the Eagles were only 2 for 11 on third down. They weren't exactly great. And that goes to the Broncos defense, that goes to their pass rush, that goes to their secondary. So that's going to be big for this team in these big games. We've seen them beat up on the Bengals. We've seen them beat up on the Raiders. But if they're going to win these big games, these close games, you've got to win third down. They won it yesterday, and they got to keep that going in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. I mean, overall, what a game. What a game that we saw from these guys. It's just
what a game.
And there's something to be said about, this kind of win. What does it mean? Because as I was saying yesterday on Friday, not all wins are created equal. There's more value to certain wins than there are to other wins. And as I said earlier on this show, a Bengals win means about as much as a Eagles loss. Sure, in the win column and the actual, meaning of the standings, no, they don't mean the same thing. But in terms of the mentality and what it means for a team and the conversation going around a team, it doesn't matter if you can beat the Bengals and then you lose to the Eagles by 3 points. It doesn't matter. But if you could beat the Bengals and then beat the Eagles, you've earned the right to put yourself into a new conversation of a playoff contender. Now, I won't go so far to say that, start buying your Super Bowl tickets now. I do believe that this team can win a Super Bowl if they continue to play like this. But what they've done is they've bought themselves a ticket to talk about the playoffs and talk about winning a couple playoff games. And they've now entered a higher tier of teams around the league, So what they've done really means a lot for this team, other than just the standings and the actual score sheet.
I agree with you. And again, big win. You saw what the Bengals did yesterday. They didn't look great against the Lions at home. That's like a JV team. And I know they're only 2-3 right now, but that team they could be 2-15 by the time it's all said and done if Burrow doesn't come back. So
yeah, I honestly, I feel for Cincy fans. I really do. I can't imagine what it's like to be a Cincy fan right now. All right, but we should probably talk about another big game that happened this weekend, and that is the Colorado Buffaloes. They lost their second game in a row. really unfortunate collapse again. And I don't know how many more times I can continue saying it, but you can't give up 14-0 leads in 2 back-to-back weeks. It was really unfortunate, and it came down to Kaden Salter again. He didn't play well. He had 3 interceptions, 217 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Trent, what did you see from this game? Was there anything to be happy about?
I mean, not necessarily. You blow another 14-point lead. You essentially remove yourself from Big 12 contention, sitting at 0-3 in conference play now. And Salter, I mean, I know he had 217 yards and 2 touchdowns, but those 3 interceptions, all 3 of them are his fault. I mean, the first one, his first pass attempt of the game was identical to the interception he threw at the end of the BYU game two weeks ago, where he's just late on a crossing route and he telegraphs it and the safety jumps it. That second one, that underneath defender was just playing mind games with him and baited him into throwing it. It looked like he was playing Madden out there. I mean, it was a great play from that defender, but Salter's got to be smarter with that. And then the one on the goal line right before halftime, first of all, 7 seconds, 1 timeout on the 1-yard line, tie game. What are you doing? Are you throwing it or are you running it?
I'm throwing it. You're
throwing it? And I get that. You got good players, but they ran the exact same play that they scored the previous touchdown on.
Yeah, no, it wasn't
great. TCU read it like a book. That safety, number 2, read it, jumped the route, tips it in the air. They get an interception. So that one was a little on the play calling. But, if Salter throws that one to Omarion Miller's outside shoulder, it might be another touchdown. But you got to diversify your play calling a little bit. And I get that it worked once, but this is a well-coached football team in TCU, and they read that like a book. And I just don't know. Salter, 3 picks. Do you need to start looking to the future? Do you need to start looking to Julian Lewis?
Short answer, yeah. Yeah, you look towards Julian Lewis. I really do. I still have some faith in Kaden Salter. I've seen some sparks of greatness out of him. There's been some really great maybe hints of something. I don't know. And especially in the first game of the season, there were multiple times where he made a play against Georgia Tech where he would climb the pocket and then throw it downfield and then just overthrown by a little bit. You know what I mean? And you could see things like that yesterday. And really, I'd like to have hope still, but 3 interceptions. You lose your second game in a row. Both of these games that they have lost were very winnable, despite what the score says in the CU game. This was a winnable game. They could have gone out and won that, and they just ended up falling apart. So I still have some faith in him, but that faith is quickly draining away. And yeah, I would not be surprised if Julian Lewis comes in next week. And at that point, it's great for Julian Lewis because he would get a shot at a solid team next week, a real good team. And then there wouldn't be any pressure. You lose, you win. It's great. But if you lose, nobody was expecting to win it anyways. So
exactly.
But will that next week's game, with Kaden Salter in that, will that be their first conference win? Because obviously there's always conversations to be had. College football, you can't predict anything, just like regular football, any given Saturday, any given Sunday. They're home. Iowa State, that's a huge game. And if they can win that, what does it actually do for the team?
I think if they can win that, that's a huge confidence boost. I mean, you got another top 25 matchup. Coach Prime still has not beat a top 25 team since the first TCU game in 2023. And that team, I got to preface it, that team was 5-7 at the end of the year. They did not finish anywhere close to the AP poll.
No.
But Iowa State is a good team, but they're going to be hungry. I mean, they just got throttled by Cincinnati on Saturday. They let up 31 points in the first half. It was a morning kick on the road, so I get it's a little rough. Their quarterback, Rocco Becht, he got a hit that looked like he would have had a concussion that kept him out for months, but he came right back in the game, took a big hit, and they made it competitive at the end. They only lost 38-30, a couple questionable. Should they have gone for a 2-point conversion? Should they have kicked an extra point? They easily climbed back in that game. But that's because they're a good team that shows resilience, and they're talented, and they're led by Rocco Becht, this veteran leader. And they're going to come into Folsom. They have 1 conference loss. 2 losses in the Big 12 is probably the most you can have if you want to make the championship game. And for Iowa State, they can't afford to have that loss be against Colorado. They got some more some more difficult games on the schedule coming up. So CU is going to have to be ready. I don't even know what to say. The fast starts used to be the issue. They've gotten out to 2 straight fast starts, 2 straight 14-0 leads.
Yeah.
Now it's about closing. The fourth quarter, they've just fallen apart in both of these games. And Coach Prime says he's frustrated. And Tawfiq Bayard says he's frustrated. And it's the same thing. And Gaden Salter says he's frustrated. If they're frustrated, go out there and play different and change your style and win these gritty football games against tough opponents late. So it's going to be a big test for CU. Like I said, that Iowa State team is going to be hungry. They're a really good team still, even though they just lost. But this is going to say a lot about who CU is as a program. If they lose, they kind of just fold over and lose and go 2-5 heading into the bye week. It's going to be a lot of uncomfortable questions to have and ask about them going into that bye in the second half of the season for sure.
And we'll be asking them. I guarantee that we will be asking those questions. But, there was some good things to see. You see the run game really get established with CU. You see that look better than it has in the past couple weeks. Is that something they can look forward to more, or do you keep it in the air with Julian Strother and Caden Salter? Or Julian Strother, wow, Julian Lewis. Oh my goodness. I'm clearly thinking about the Nuggets. Julian Lewis or Caden Salter. But the run game looked, better than it has, and it's been growing. But there's still some very serious issues that they're dealing with there too. Is there any good, real shining spot of this team that you can look at and point at and say, yep, that's what we can be happy about?
I think it's the offensive line is what they can be happy about. Jordan Seaton is still one of the highest graded tackles in the country. They've been giving Salter clean pockets. They've been blocking up the run nice. That's what they should be happy about now. But then they got to build off of that. Dallin Hayden played well, 9 carries, 61 yards. Michael Welch was all right, 12 for 40, not his best game. But overall, CU had 35 carries for 126 yards compared to just 29 pass attempts from Salter. It's another game where they've leaned into the run a little more than the pass. And it looks like they're trying to establish that identity of being a running football team. But I think you got to look at your O-line to start and say, hey, we have a good group here. We got 5 solid guys. What can we do to build off of that? Because clearly the quarterback, Caden Salter, when he scrambles out of the pocket after his first read isn't there, he's not utilizing the strengths of that O-line. And that's where I start to think maybe another quarterback can be more efficient with that group of 5 blocking in front of him.
Yeah. We'll have to see coming into next week. It's real unfortunate that they couldn't win this game. Again, very winnable, despite what the score says. You got to lead, and they just can't keep it. And the game ends up going away from them. Really it ended up getting away from them later in the fourth quarter. But, what can you do? What can you do except grow from here and get, maybe Julian Lewis in there? That would be great to see. But I really do believe most likely, scenario is that Caden Salter plays this week. They go into the bye week. Then we see something new. But
yes,
yeah, could be wrong. But I think that's going to do it for today's episode of From the Nosebleeds. Thank you all for joining the inaugural episode. I know Trent and I both had a great time being here. Make sure to check out our Twitter and YouTube for a poll that we're going to be putting up tonight. And then we're going to be reacting to polls on Friday. So go get your answers in. We're going to be asking a few quick questions there. And then we'll be reacting to all that on Friday. But thank you guys all so much for joining. We will be back with you guys again tomorrow at 9 a.m. to talk more about the Broncos, Buffs, Nuggets, Avs, everything going on in Denver sports. But that'll do it for today. Thank you all so much for being here. We will see you all later. Bye, y'all.